Hey guys, Dylan from the Geek Duo here, and today I'll be bringing you my reaction to RWBY Fairy Tales Episode 2, titled The Hunter's Children. A lone hunter protects a swampy village until disaster strikes. Will his children pick up the mantle? So, obviously, this is another one from the book. I don't feel I should need to say that for every episode, but I am probably going to anyway. But this is another one I can't really remember. Like, of the tales in here, there are only like 2 or 3 that I know off of heart. Like, well, The Indecisive King, The Man Who Stared at the Sun, The Story of the Seasons, The Girl in the Tower, The Two Brothers. Those last 3 because they were in the actual show. The Infinite Man, I know. And I'm pretty sure The Gift from the Moon. I know, like, the general. So I do know half the stories in there. It's just most of them aren't in this actual show. So, yeah. I'm going in as close to blind as I could be. So, let's get this started in 3, 2, 1, go. I do, however, know at least what the characters in this can do because of a video I'm making. Oh, he seemed excited about food. I feel this could have been done by voiceover instead of this one. With his eyes closed. He had his eyes open there. Hmm. Being able to know when grim are near doesn't mean you can always fight them all off. There was no one to calm them down. It's weird to see just a simple gun. Now, Was it Grimm or was it Raven's group? Obviously not Raven's group, but I meant bandits. Hey, his sister's nearby. Oh, that's handy. Again, he opened his eyes while doing that. It's meant to only be while his eyes are closed that he's imperceivable. Hmm. His semblance seems a little different too, because that was flaring up before he made contact. Of course. They had a little buffering issue there. Hmm. Alright, this one was meant to be why they're all in teams of 4. Yeah, in those last few seconds, it came back to me that that was meant to be why they're all put into teams of 4 at the academy, is based off of this fairy tale. So you may have noticed the weird cut in the middle of there. I'm using a free account, partially because, well, I never renewed it after I wasn't paying for it anymore because RWBY went to Crunchyroll, and they've specifically said don't give Rooster Teeth money, fund the individuals. So there's no point in me paying for a subscription if Rooster Teeth is shutting down in like 2 months. So there's going to be weird cuts in a few of these probably. It seems like once they hit a certain time limit. Anyway, as I did with the first one, I'm going to pause now, read through the actual story, and see how it compares. Okay, again, pretty much the general beats of the story were translated, but there were certain things that were lost in translation, which is pretty apt when it comes to retellings of fairy tales and all that. Each version is going to be slightly different. First thing to note is this one was actually submitted by RWBY. It wasn't a curated one from Ozpin. So it starts off by saying about a hunter who had 4 children and how their family lived in a small village deep in the swamps of Mistral. And it goes on to list several types of Grimm that we've never seen before, such as Legatodiles, Grendels, Long Tongues, and Wisps. None of them make an appearance in this, it's just Beowulfs, which, I mean, Beowulfs, Grendels, sort of works. And goes on to talk about how, in those days, there were no huntsmen or anything, so if humans couldn't defend their settlement, they'd up and leave. But this town was unique because while the men and women of the village would go out during the day to hunt swamp animals and all that, the hunter would go out to hunt Grimm. And when he'd return, as payment for him protecting them all, they would give him food and resources enough for him and his family to survive as part of their town. And then it says, while the hunter's family ate dinner, he'd tell his children about the Grimm he faced during the day, and they'd ask him, why are you the only one who hunts them? And he'd give a variety of answers. He's like, because my aura is stronger than anyone else in the village. And then he'd go on to give them a talk about how even though he has a strong aura, that doesn't mean anything if you don't know how to use it to shield yourself or unlock your semblance. So he'd use it as a teaching point. He'd say, because my semblance lets me know when Grimm are nearby, which would then rouse a lively discussion about who in the family had the best semblance. Whether it be the older sister, we heard all of them in the episode, the oldest brother whose semblance linked auras as long as they make physical contact, the youngest sister whose semblance calmed any human or animal. That's actually what distinguishes it from Ren's, because we don't know if he can calm animals. And the youngest brother, whose semblance allows him to hide in plain sight so long as his eyes are closed. That's why I made note in this episode that there are multiple times where he's meant to be invisible, but his eyes are open. And also, the older brother has to be being linked, whether that be physical contact or like a rope tied around him that other people are in contact with. That also still works. But the older sister's one flared up before he made contact with her. And on other nights, the hunter would say, because I hate the Grimm for killing your mother, and I hate myself for not being there when she died. And it said, dinners those nights were silent until one child would ask, tell us about mother again, which would then evolve to each of them just talking about what they remember and about her and everything. One day the hunter didn't come home from the swamp, so the villagers told the children about his death, and while they grieved that night, the next morning they discussed what they should do. Oldest daughter said we should stay and defend our home. Older brother said, what about other people? We should go and try and help them. The youngest sister said, we must study the Grimm so we can figure out better ways to protect against them. And the younger brother said, we should seek adventure on our own. We can fight, but protecting others just puts ourselves at risk. And it says they loved each other too much to argue, and knowing that they were at an impasse, they all went their own ways. Older sister stayed to defend the village, but the villagers were despaired after the hunter's death, which drew in more Grimm. Villagers started falling to the Grimm, so they decided to pick up and leave. The older brother, he went out looking for other villages. First four that he came across were all decimated, and the fifth one was under siege. He successfully defended against it by convincing the villagers to link themselves together with rope, and then that linked all of their auras so he could defend against the Grimm. Younger sister built a structure up in the trees so that she could observe the Grimm from a distance, using her semblance just enough to not be able to be perceived by them. But studying them in a docile state doesn't really learn you anything. So when she saw a large group of them running in a singular direction, she decided to follow. And the younger brother, well, he got lost almost immediately after leaving his town. And so he was stumbling through the marshes, and just he couldn't really use his semblance because have to close his eyes, meaning he can't see what's in front of him when he's moving. And eventually he gets trapped in a clearing by Grimm. And while they can't see him, they can still sense him. But all of a sudden, he feels a wave of calmness come over him, and so the Grimm leave. And that's how he reunites with his sister, and they both realize that, well, since the Grimm are no longer focused on him, but they're still heading in the same direction, there must be more people who are going to be attacked. So they go off to follow them. The older sister, who is leading the rest of their village away now that they've decided to leave, is following her semblance because she thinks that's leading them to like a new and safe village because it leads her to what she needs the most. And she's the first one to notice the Grimm barge through the forest and in aims of attacking the group. She's able to dispatch some of them, but just as she's giving up hope at being able to defeat them all, thinking, well, maybe at least some of the villagers will be able to escape, the Grimm start falling from behind, and she notices that it's her younger siblings. So they all form a line between the Grimm and the villagers. They still don't think they're going to be able to do it until the older sister feels a hand on her shoulder and her aura flare up, because the brother, he's still connected to all those townspeople. So he passes the rope to all his siblings, so they also have their auras linked to it, all revitalized and all that. And they just effectively wipe out the Grimm. They then go on to apologize using pretty much the exact same words as they used in the episode. And then the closing narration from Ozpin is also pretty much the exact same as the last paragraph of this. So, like I said, the general beats are there, but a lot of the meat of the story, I guess you could say, was taken out. Also, Ozpin's note says that he says, "This is one of my favorite fairy tales, and I include it here not because the message still resonates today, well, not only because it still resonates today, perhaps more than ever, but because the four children bear a striking resemblance to the four-person teams that we make at the Huntsman Academy. Maybe the King of Remnant had this in mind when he set up that precedent. And then he says, while we don't know the exact origins of this tale, it certainly predates the current understanding of huntsmen and huntresses. He also says, the children embody many of the traits that make good huntsmen, and I can vouch for the effectiveness of teamwork. I have also wondered over the years if the lessons learned by each of the children might also serve to guide the leaders of Vale, Vacuo, Mistral, and Atlas. Surely four kingdoms working together can accomplish more than each of them alone. which is the whole. In the end, we're going to have to unite every kingdom in Remnant against Salem. That's like the overarching thing. And yeah, what were the lessons they learned? One was um, they were stubborn, too many Grimm for them to fight alone, and without the others, they lost the direction. But their semblance brought them home. One left everyone behind and realized he was stronger when he was with them. Which, yeah, that's pretty much Atlas. The best way to learn about Grimm is by fighting them, and one was selfish and lost sight of the most important things in his life. Now, other than Atlas being the one to leave everyone behind and pursue his own thing, the other three, you can sort of argue about which one applies to which. Even really, the leaving everyone behind, you could argue, well, actually, that's Vacuo, because they've left pretty much every other to go do their own thing because of the fact that their entire kingdom was decimated for resources for the Great War, and, well, no one really stayed around to help them out after that, so they've decided to do their own thing. So you could argue each of them have qualities that could be related to one of the four siblings. And it makes me wonder what the future of those kingdoms is going to be if we ever do get a conclusion of the story, and how it relates to the lessons learned by the hunter's children. But yeah, that was a interesting one. I would say, in terms of translating it from book to screen, this one did a worse job than the first episode. But I think it still got the message across, whereas the first one, it missed the message, but did a better. It's really hard to explain. It was more one-to-one, but missed the message, whereas this one had the message, but was a lot of it was taken out. I guess you can sort of say that. I probably didn't explain myself real well, but yeah. Anyway, I'm interested to see where the rest of these go, because the next two seem interesting. Well, one of them I know the story of anyway, so of course it's interesting. But I'm not overly familiar with episode 3. But anyway, with that being said, I'll catch you in the next one.